Good morning. The topic for discussion is convolutions and central limit theorem. We talked about convolution when we are discussing about the transforms, that is Fourier transform, Laplace transform and Z transform. And now we see, and those who are teaching, when we are teaching probability and statistics also, the idea of convolution will come there. And it has I mean to say that the convolution has wide range of applications, particularly in reaching the central limit theorem. This plays a crucial role. So how how the role is crucial in the development of central limit theorem, which I am going to discuss. So now see, for motivation, in terms of our good friends polynomials in one variables with quotients as integers, rational numbers or real numbers or complex numbers, we discuss about convolution. So we take two polynomials, f1 of x is a0 plus a1x plus a2x square, and f2 of x is equal to b0 plus b1x plus b2x square plus b3x cube. So here we are considering two polynomials f1 of x and f2 of x respectively of degrees 2 and 3. Now what can we do with the polynomials? We can add polynomials and we can multiply polynomials. We are more focusing on multiplication here. So when we multiply two polynomials, this is how we reach at the resultant, that is when f1 of x is multiplied by f2 of x. Precisely what we are doing here is we are correcting the constant term, quotient of x and quotient of x square and quotient of x cube. So remember, f1 f2, the product is a polynomial of degree 5. So now some simple observations. f1 is a polynomial of degree 2, f2 is a polynomial of degree 3, f1 f2 is a polynomial of degree 5, the product. Further, we can easily observe a pattern in the quotients of the polynomial f1 f2 of x, that is the 3, the product of f1 of x and f2 of x. Look at here, the constant term. See, when we have f1 of x as this and f2 of x as b0 plus b1x plus b2x square plus b3x cube, the product is a constant term is a0 b0 and the quotient of x is a0 b1 plus a1 b0. Quotient of x square is a0 b2 plus a1 b1 plus a2 b0. Likewise, we have this one. We are able to see a pattern in the quotients of x power I. That is most important observation. So now if we go to the general situation where f1 is a polynomial of degree m and f2 is a polynomial of degree n, now you look at f1 f2 of x is equal to this one, that is the quotients here we are representing by c0, c1, c2 etc. cn plus m. This is a polynomial of degree n plus m. Some simple observations. Again, see, in short, we can write f1 of x as sigma, in sigma notation I mean, aj xj, j is equal to 0 to m. Similarly, f2 of x is say bl x power l, l is equal to 0 to n. So when we are representing f1, the summing variable is z, that is what they call it index, and when we are representing f2, the summing variable is l. So the index is l there. So it is varying from 0 to n when we are dealing with f2, and j is varying from 0 to m when we are dealing with f1. Now f1 f2 is a polynomial of degree n plus m. We can write that as sigma ck x power k. Here the summing variable is k, that is the index is k, and so it varies from 0 to n plus m because f1 f2 is a polynomial of degree n plus m. Now, if we look at the coefficients of f1, f2 of x, then see that is any quotient, a power of x power k, the quotient of x power k, I mean ck, that ck can be written in the using sigma notation like, see the one I have described in 7. So sigma AJBL. Remember, J we are using for F1 and L we are using for F2. Now what we are doing is that we are collecting, see once I fix K, what are the values that K can take from 0 to n plus m? Because F1, F2 is a polynomial of degree n plus m. Now we are, so if you fix K, then how this sum of products can, so how this sum of products can be viewed? So we are trying to observe Ck as a sum of products, a finite sum of products. So what we are doing is that we are collecting the products AJBL in such a way that J plus L is equal to K. We are fixing K. Okay, that is what we have done. See here. In this here, see whenever F1 is this and F2 is F1 is A0 plus A1x plus A2x square and B0 is and F2 of x is B0 plus B1x plus B2x square plus B3x cube. Then how we collected the constant term C0, you collect those AIs and ALs and BKs such that L plus K is 0. So A0, B0, that is the only option. When we are going for C1, the choices for the products AB whose index sum is 1 is 0, 1, 1, 0. And similarly, and similarly, when we are going for the C3, it is A0, B3, A1, B2, A2, B1. The sum is 3. That is what one has to observe. So if we observe like that, so that is an informal way of getting the value for Ck. Now we will try to formalize it. If formalize in the sense, Ck is equal to J is equal to 0 to K, Aj into Bk minus J. See, we have for Ck two representations. One is 7 and the other is 8. Here representation I mean a formula. So the first version that is mentioned in 7 is a formal representation, while the second version that is mentioned in 8 is more formal. In the 7 it is informal and in 8 it is more formal. So now see, that is what we are looking at. This is Ck is equal to J is equal to 0 to K, Aj Bk minus J. Okay, we are fixing K, remember that one, and we are varying here J from 0 to K. We are varying J from 0 to K. But what are the values that K can take? The K can take values from 0 to n plus m. So some more observations and questions here. Some more observations and some questions about this formula. See, the indices K vary from 0 to n plus m. J do not go beyond m. That is very important here. What is J? J, see, because this J corresponds to the first polynomial, that is a0 plus a1x plus etc. am x power m. So this J will not cross beyond m. Similarly, because we are only talking in terms of J, if we fix that J, it is enough. So with regard to J only we talk about. Now J do not go beyond m. Then what is the meaning of summation with J going to K when K is bigger than m? That is because K can take any value from 0 to n plus m. So K is going beyond m, that is the thing. So bigger than m. So the question 2 is well posed only when we agree that am plus 1, am plus 2, am plus n is equal to 0 and bn plus 1, bn plus 2, etc. bm plus n is equal to 0. Now we are ready to talk about a collection of sequences. That is, the collection of sequences here, C subscript 00b, the collection of sequences with only finitely many non-zero terms. So, thus see we have A. I'm in fact we are referring this with regard to F1 and F2. What are F1 and F2? Please remember our F1, F2 are always these things here. A0 plus A1x plus A2x square plus AMX power m. F2 is B0 plus B1x plus etc. Bn into x power m. They are polynomials of degree m and n. Now, when we come to this kind of representation, here I am talking about sequences. Now from polynomials to sequences we are shifting. So A is equal to A0, A1, etc. Am, because after Am we are putting simply all zeros. Okay, that is a sequence. See, when sequences are of two types. It can be a finite sequence, it can be an infinite sequence. In fact, when we are talking about C00, we are keeping an eye on infinite sequences. For this discussion, I confine only to the finite sequences. So here B is equal to B0, B1, Bn, etc. Remaining are filled with zeros. So they are the two typical elements of the set C00. Now, we define the convolution of A and B to be the sequence C0, C1, etc. Cm plus n, and remaining are 0. So, the terms of C are given by the formula 8. What is the formula 8 here? The formula 8 here is mentioned here. This is the very important one. See, we have a formula for Ck, that is coefficient of x power k in the product f1, f2, the product of polynomials. Okay, and that is informal version, that is 7, and the 8 is a formal one because we are simply eliminating L here. We are simply eliminating L and we are expressing that L in terms of k and j. We remember one thing, k is fixed. So once we have that one, see, that is very important one, that is formula 8. So convolution of two sequences A and B, here we are getting it as Cm plus 1. See here, what are the sequences we are considering? These sequences C00 consists of, it is the collection of sequences with only finitely many non-zero terms. Most of them are zeros. That is the thing. What such sequences only we are considering, and the convolution in an operation we are defining here. It is known as convolution A star B. So how to get the terms we have discussed? We defined by using the formula 8. So see, now remember one thing, what can we do with polynomials? We can add polynomials, we can multiply polynomials. Now we are coming to another setup where we are considering sequences with finitely many non-zero terms. Finitely many non-zero terms. So see, what is happening here is that can you add sequences? Yes, we can add sequences by in the form of term by term addition. Can we multiply sequences? Multiplication of sequences is not that much simple. So how we multiplied here? This multiplication is convolution. That is what we talk about. So this is the motivation for convolution here. So now again, I just would like to recall that formula, because that formula only is the focus for us. Now see, let P be the collection of all polynomials of any, that is finite degree. It is easy to see that there is a 1-1 correspondence between C00 and P, script P. So you have f1 of x, I am directly giving the 1-1 correspondence here. F1 of x is a polynomial of degree m, then I am associating a sequence here, f subscript a. So because the quotients are represented in terms of ai's, So A0, A1, etc., AM, it's remaining all are zeros here. So that is a member of C00. Similarly, for F2. Now F1 plus F2 is trivial. It is a polynomial and its degree is maximum of m plus n. M comma n. F1, F2 is a polynomial of degree m plus n. Now see, you have two spaces. One is polynomial space, another is a sequence space. Okay. So here, what is multiplicative identity? You can think, see, addition is not an issue. Whenever you are discussing about convolution, you are dealing with the this linear transformations, because Fourier transform is a linear transformation, Laplace transform is a linear transformation, and Z transform is a linear transformation. So addition of vectors is there. Polynomial you can take as a vector, sequence you can consider as a vector. You can add two vectors, you will get the result as a vector. Now the question is something called multiplication of vectors. So there is some important operation. That operation we are trying to map here. So you have polynomial multiplication is identified with the convolution operation in C00 sequence space. Clearly, plus is with plus both script P and C00 are abelian groups. But with regard to this dot operation here, I encircled with the red ballpoint pen C, that is an operation, but you can find easily a multiplicative identity in polynomials, that is constant polynomial 1. In the same way, here in C00 also one can try for the multiplicative, that is convolution identity. Okay, convolution is actually a commutative and an associative operation, and it is in fact, it is a commutative monoid. It is a commutative monoid with that operation. Now, yeah, this is one of the most important observations here, which we are going to use is SC is equal to S of A into S of B. What is this S of A? A is a sequence, I already told you. Please remember, A we mean this, and B we mean this. It's a sequence. So S of A means you just add the all non-zero terms. How many non-zero terms will be there? Finitely many. That is what we are saying, finite only. So you can add and you will get a finite number. SB, SC. Now see, this is not that much required. Now I will go to, this is very important one. What is that important one? The important one is 12. Sum of C is equal to sum terms of C is equal to sum of terms of A into sum of terms of B. This plays very crucial role in looking at applications of convolution to probability theory. So, right, see, now I say we knew about probability mass functions. We are starting with the mass function here. So let A is equal to A1, A2, A and B, a non-negative real numbers, a set of non-negative real numbers such that A1 plus A2 plus etc. An is 1. We call this one a probability vector or a probability mass function, because we are dealing with vector spaces. Think of a random experiment with n possible outcomes here, or with the probabilities as a1, a2, an. So you can think this this vector, probability vector or random vector, as an experiment, random experiment with n possible outcomes with probabilities as a1, a2, an. If A comma B are two probability vectors, then their convolution C is equal to A star B is also a probability vector. How this is, that is why I told very important one. So you have this formula, S of A into S of B is equal to S of C. What I mean to say here is that, see, if we have A is equal to a probability vector A1, A2, etc. Am. They are non-negative numbers. Please remember, positive, non-negative whose sum is 1. Now you have B, B1, B2, etc. Bn here. They are also non-negative whose sum is 1. That is, each Ai is greater than or equal to 0, sigma Ai is 1. Each Bj is greater than or equal to 0, sigma Bj is 1. So we call that one either a probability vector or a probability mass function. Now we are generating a new one. That new one is a new vector that is equal to A star B, because we know what star here, I mean convolution. There is a formula there. You can generate those things. How many members this star will have? C1, C2, etc. Cm plus n. Of course, if you take A0 and B0 here, you have Cm plus 1 like that. So, all the remaining things are 0. You need not write zeros here. We are ignoring zeros, only this one. So, that is what I am telling here. So, see now if I want to calculate this sum, we are sure that each Ci is greater than or equal to 0 or each Ck is greater than or equal to 0. But if you add Ck, what guarantee is there? It is 1, because we know that sum of AIs is 1. This is nothing but sum of AIs into sum of Bj's. We know that sum of AIs is 1 and sum of BIs is 1. So the product is 1. That is why this CK, this sum is also 1. Therefore, this becomes a probability vector. Probability vector means they are non-negative and sum is 1. So that is the role of that formula 12, which I am talking about, here. Yeah, this is the formula. No. Yeah, this is the formula 12. Okay. So, right. Now, quickly we proceed to the, right. I am going for the discrete case now. The famous example of tossing a fair dice. A fair dice means equal probability. So, for all the faces 1 to labeled 1 to 6, we have equal probability, that is 1 by 6, 1 by 6, 1 by 6, for which the probability distribution is this. See, this is known as when you are equally likely possibility is there for the outcomes here. The outcomes are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 labeled faces. Then I am observation. See, from outcome, observation will come. Outcome is same. Observation is subjective one. So here the observation is the number on the face value. So that is x1 I am saying. x1 of S random variable idea is coming here. So thus we have x1 is equal to 1, x2 is equal to 2, like that we are making our observations. Observation means random variable. Outcome, from outcome we make observations. So this distribution is a uniform distribution because we have equally likely probabilities. So now what is the range of this random variable x1 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the distribution graph I have given, this is uniform. See, flat one. This is a flat curve. This is a flat one. I'm talking about flat in the sense. See here, this is the flatness I am saying. See, this is flat. This is flat. So that is whenever we are dealing with the flat graphs, that we mean that they are uniform. That they are uniform. So here this is flat. That is uniform. Okay, fine. Now, so now what we are doing is that let P2 represents the probability distribution of the observations for sum of two throws. So now we are throwing a dice twice. And what is our outcome space? Now see, your sample space consists of 36 sample points. Now our observation is 36 sample points. I mean, you have for A, I mean x, y, these are our observations, outcomes. This is outcome. And my observation here is, this is x2, my observation, x plus y. Okay, so this is observation. So now what is happening here? See, we have a, that is how I am getting this P2. P2 is a probability vector I am saying. See, P1 is 1 by 6, 1 by 6 because the total is 1. So that is a probability vector. Convolution star 1 by 6, 1 by 6, 1 by 6, etc. You can pull out that constant 1 by 6 and you can talk about the convolution of these two finite sequences. In each sequence here, the same number of ones are there. You see, this is a very simplest case. But the length of the sequence, if you convolute these two sequences, you are getting a sequence of 11 terms. So that is 1 by 36. Using the formula, I mean 8, I have calculated this one. Now we have the probability distribution. This we know how to compute. This is sum of the two face values here. So look at the graph. That is very important here. The first graph is x1. Only one first observation. It is a flat one, uniform one. Please remember that one. And now if you add that one, addition. So one more thing, addition, you are doing addition of observations, then you are getting a thing like this is a triangular one. Now, if you go for a third one, that is sum of the three faces, third throw yields the range of space, the range of this transformation is, see here I have given R3. So R3 here has 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all these problems till 18. R2 is taking, please remember here, R2 is taking, R2 has 2 to 11. If you add two numbers which are between 1 and 6, the minimum is 2 and the maximum is 12. I forgot to write 12 there, 12 actually that is. So 12, 2 to 12. Now here, if you add three numbers which are in between 1 to 6, the least is 3 and the highest is 18. And for that one, if you plot the distribution, that is, see here, how P3 I am getting, P1 star P2. P2 is, what is P2? P1 star P1. See, P1 is a probability vector. You can vector, probability vector means it is a special type of sequence, non-zero terms whose sum is 1. So if we have P1, P2, and if you convolute, then you are getting the resultant graph is like this. I am not writing the distribution there, it is simple one again. So now what we have noticed, now if you go for convolution of another time, so what we are here basically doing is that we have P1, a probability vector. Initially you have 1 by 6, 1 by 6, like that. How many are there? We have 1 by 6, 6 terms are there. Then we have P2, okay. We got here I think 11 terms. And when you go for P3, that is how you are this, we got P1, it is P1 star P1 convolution. And here how we are getting P3, P1 star the resultant P2. So it has more terms, what I mean to say. So when you are keep on increasing, when you keep on increasing the power of convolution, that is P1 star, P1 star, P1 star, P1. If you go for that one, okay, you have P4. So what is happening here is that you are getting more non-zero numbers here. Here more non-negative non-zero numbers whose sum is 1. Here more non-negative non-zero numbers whose sum is 1. See, initially we started with 6, then 11, then more like that. So what is happening if your n goes to infinity, that is you can talk about n, then it appears like exactly a normal curve. That is what it says. So one can notice that the graph of the probability distribution of the observations for sum of n throws of a dice represented by the probability vector Pn and the random variable and which is represented by the random variable xn as the graph of Hammer's normal curve as n becomes sufficiently large. Now the continuous case. A continuous case is an equivalent term here is probability density function, property we know. And here also we can talk about the convolution like this, like we have seen in Fourier transform, Laplace transform and jet transform, because this being a continuous variable. So here I have taken an example. Again we started with a uniform random variable, so which takes values between minus half and half. This is a uniform continuous variable. So how the curve looks like, this is a continuous curve. This is a continuous curve. Okay, we see this is the graph of the uniform distribution, which takes values from minus half to half. So then I convolute once this one with the same thing, then see, surprisingly, if you evaluate this integral, we will get 1 minus mod x if mod x is less than or equal to 1, 0 otherwise. So we are getting here, see, earlier we have a graph like this which is having some discontinuity. Where is the discontinuity? The discontinuity is here, the discontinuity. But when it comes to the next one, if you convolute this one with the same thing, then we got almost continuity. See here, it is a triangular curve. Then if you keep on convoluting again and again, see the P3 I have calculated here, it is coming like this. So almost normal shape we are reaching. If you try to plot this curve, almost a bell shaped curve is coming. And if you increase the subscript value of P, like P15, P16, like that, you will get a finer and finer one that is very close to the normal one. So what we are finally concluding is that the central limit theorem. So let x1, x2, xn be the sequence of independent, identically distributed random variables, each with mean mu and variance sigma square. Then you have this one, this famous theorem. So remember here, the very important role here of the central limit theorem is played. This is the one, that is the sum of the variables is coming over here, and sum of the variables is coming over here. And one more thing is that because it has some limitations, so independent, identically distributed, these two are there. But remember, we have considered two examples. One is in discrete case and the other is in continuous case. In the discrete case we have generated like x1, x2, x3. In the continuous case also we have generated x1, x2, x3. You can see this document. So in each of the cases they are independent variables, but they are not identically distributed. Remember that one. They are independent ones, but they are not identically distributed. So because why I am saying is that in continuous case you can easily see this distribution curve is different from this distribution curve. Identically means you have the same curve. It is not, we are not having the same curve, but they are independent. Okay. So the conclusion is that this seems to be a very striking phenomenon, starting with different probability distributions. We seem to get close to a normal distribution if we take repeated convolutions. That is very, very important one. So what we are concluding is that using these examples, it seems to be a very striking phenomenon, starting with different probability distributions. On one hand, you have taken discrete distribution, uniform distribution. In case of continuous distribution, we have again taken a continuous uniform distribution. From that one, by applying repeated convolutions, we are able to reach a normal distribution. And does this happen always? No, the answer is no. With rare exceptions only this happens. That exceptions are clearly mentioned in central limit theorem. What are those exceptions? Those which are neither independent or nor identically distributed. They are the exceptions. If the variables are identically distributed and independent, then we can reach normal. That is what we have here. Thank you.